Where were we? Ribosomal RNA. So I go escape. Don't stop recording. Sorry. And then we're going to go, we're asking, the question is, what is our RNA? Answer, well, it's ribosomal RNA. Oh, look, I got that email, Michaela. Yeah, sorry about that. All right, so Google Images, ribosome. So that is a ribosome, yeah? You recognize it? What's all the purple stuff? That's protein. What's all the gray and light teal colored stuff? It's all of it is the ribosome, yeah? This is a ribosome. What is a ribosome made out of? It's made out of protein. This part here, this purple here is protein, yeah? What's all the rest of it? What's all the gray stuff? What's all the teal stuff? And what's this gold stuff in the middle? No. This part is protein, that part is protein, that part is protein. This stuff here ain't protein. What is it? Julian. Yeah, there's two subunits. You got your 50S subunit and your 30S subunit, yeah? To come together to make your 70S prokaryotic ribosome, yeah? That's the active site. Excellent, yeah? That's the part where it's getting the job done that it does. And what does it do? Makes proteins. How important is a ribosome to life? Central, yeah? All living things have ribosomes, yeah? Right? Because all living things have to make proteins, yeah? All right. So what are ribosomes made out of? Well, they're about 30% protein, and the rest is RNA, yeah? Ribosome means RNA body, yeah? Some means body. They're called ribosomes because they're made out of ribonucleic acid, RNA, yeah? Guys understand? Right? So, we talked about how RNA is a informational molecule like DNA, yeah? DNA is informational, yeah? RNA is informational. Yes, a messenger RNA is a piece of information, yeah? But it's also structural, yeah? Ribosomes are built out of RNA, yeah? You guys got that? They're made out of it, right? It's a building material like protein is a building material, right? So, ribosomal RNA, how do we make it? Where is the information? Next question, where is the information to make a ribosome? Where does the information to build a ribosome sit? This is, you might find, this is a deceptively simple question. DNA, yeah? Right? So DNA is the code to make an RNA, yeah? So if I want to make a ribosome, I just make a messenger RNA, and then that messenger RNA never gets turned into a protein. It just coils up and becomes ribosomal RNA. Does that make sense? You guys get that? And so I guess maybe you wouldn't call it a messenger RNA. It's not really carrying a message. It's being built. It's an assembly piece of a ribosome, yeah? All right, so, guys, so why do we compare ribosomal RNA? We'll talk about that in a second, yeah? But if I want to know how related one thing is to another, I can look at the DNA that it uses to make its ribosomes, yeah? And the reason I do that is because ribosomes are fundamental, and we'll talk about that in a second, yeah? Okay. So, knowing what we know, there's 3 domains of life. We've already talked about that, yeah? There's the prokaryotes, and within the prokaryotes, there are bacteria and archaea, and then there's the eukarya. But because the bacteria and archaea are more distantly related to each other than archaea is to eukarya, we make 2 groups, yeah, of prokaryotes. But that three-domain system is relatively new. When I was in high school taking biology class, my textbook didn't talk at all about three domains. Yeah? And it wasn't until 1978 that those three domains were accepted. Yeah? That doesn't mean that I was in high school in 1978. I wasn't. But my textbooks had not caught up. Yeah? I was in high school in the 80s. Yeah? And in the 80s, they had a five-kingdom system, not a three-domain system. There were five kingdoms, and one was all the bacteria. Yeah? That included the bacteria and the archaea. The archaea were put into the same group. Yeah? But that wasn't correct. Yeah? So that was in some of your lifetimes, and it was certainly within my lifetime, that the three-domain system was concocted. Yeah? Before then, 1735, that was only two kingdoms, the plants and the animals. Yeah? And that was Linnaeus. Right? What about bacteria? Well, he doesn't even hardly know about bacteria. Remember, the only person at this point to have seen bacteria was Van Leeuwenhoek, right? And he took the secret of how to see bacteria to his grave, yeah? And it wasn't until the mid-1800s that somebody said, well, what are we going to do with these guys? Where do they belong? And they were put into the kingdom plantae, yeah? And so when we talk about your gut flora, right? Flora literally means flower, right? And flowers generally smell nice, and our guts generally don't. Nevertheless, they were put into the category of the flora, yeah? And so on, yeah? 1959, the kingdom fungi. Before that, where were mushrooms placed? In the plants. Is that correct? It isn't correct, yeah? If we look at plants, or if we look at fungi, why do you think we put the fungi in the plant group? Can you think of a rationale by which somebody would say that a mushroom was a plant? Julian. They sprout out of the ground like a plant does, yeah? They don't move like a plant doesn't move, yeah? So those are, it's reasonable to think, and yet, if I go to Google Image, where's my images? If I go to phylogenetic tree, fungi, plants, animals. And what do we see here for the plants and animals, according to Robin Broyles? Which is more closely related? Animals and fungi are more closely related to each other than either is to the plants, yeah? And yet, if I sneak ahead here, what do I see in my golden guide? Anyone ever have golden guides when they were a kid? So these are super cheap children's books that tell you scientific facts or occasionally scientific non-facts, yeah? Or I guess, yeah, I'm sitting here giving a hard time to golden guides, and I enjoyed these things very much when I was a little kid. You can't really blame the golden guide for this if this was from before 1959 when books cost $1.50, yeah? Those were the days. Oh yes, those were the days when they actually had books, yeah? Anyway, are these plants? They are not plants, yeah? So the three domain is pretty recent, yeah? Okay, so, and again, the reason things are, we're not done, yeah? The whole kingdom Protista, right? The protist kingdom is a completely artificial system, yeah? If we look at the phylogeny of all the things that are protists, there are things that aren't even remotely related, yeah? Let's look at that, shall we? Phylogeny protists. So here we can see all the things that are protists. Where are they? Here are the amoeba. Here are the fungi. Everything that's yellow is a protist. These ones are more closely related to plants. This one is closely related to the animals. This one is related to the fungi. And these guys aren't related to anybody. Yeah? So clearly, these relationships that we all put together as the protists, the protist kingdom in yellow, doesn't make any evolutionary sense. Yeah? So that needs to be fixed and is in the process of being fixed. We're still not quite sure where things belong, yeah? All right. But once we find out what things are, we can give them a scientific name, yeah? Why are scientific names great? They're universally understood, yeah? They're used worldwide. What do you call a bluebird if you're in France? Do they have bluebirds in France? I would expect they do. What do they call them? They call them the avion bleu, right? And what's that? Blue airplane. Le tweety de bleu, yeah? Or whatever, yeah? Right? And then someone from England shows up and says, you know, that's actually a bluebird. And what does the guy from France say? No. He says, you want to fight me? There's a tweety de bleu. Everyone knows. Yeah? And then wars start, yeah? Bloodshed, millions of lives, yeah? So we use a scientific name. We use a scientific name because that's Latin, right? And Latin is a dead language. Nobody speaks Latin anymore, yeah? But it is a well-understood language, and it was for a while at least the European continent's second language. Everybody that got educated had to take Latin back in the day, yeah? And so that was a good way to get everybody to have a common name for everything, yeah? Is that clear? All right, so what do we get from a scientific name? Well, we can get the name of the scientist who discovered it. We can get the place it lives. We can get diseases that it causes. We can get the region, physical properties, yeah? Chromohalobacter, right? Chromo means color. Halo means salt, yeah? Meris mortui, this is a particularly information-rich name, right? It's a colorful bacteria. It lives in salt, and we find it in the Dead Sea, yeah? Let's see, Streptococcus pyogenes, right? Chains of coccus-shaped cells, and it's something that causes disease. It causes pus to form, yeah? So there's a lot we can sneak into a scientific name. Got it? All right, so how we classify living things? Well, we have this system, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Yeah, so domain, did we talk about this? This is a classification of a bear. I think walking through this once is not a bad idea. So humor me. Let's classify the bear, shall we? The American black bear. Well, what domain does it belong to? Ah, domain, not species, yeah? Not genus. It's a eukaryote, yeah? Well, what does that tell us? A eukaryote, well, They have a nucleus in their cells, yeah? They have 80 S ribosomes and not 70 S ribosomes. They have mitochondria, yeah? Yeah, thank you, yeah. You know what I love is like, I'm sorry, I got to take this. Hey, how's it going? Okay, yeah, so just if you can get the sound to go off, yeah. All right. So all of these are eukaryotes, right? What's not on here? Archaea and bacteria, things without a nucleus, yeah? As we go down to the next level, we go down to the kingdom. What kingdom does the black bear belong to? Animalia, of course, right? Because it's an animal, right? And so when we go from eukarya to animalia, we are learning more basically at the cellular level, right? Animalia are multicellular. They eat food. They don't have chloroplasts in their cells, yeah? They move. So when we go from here to here, what do we lose? Well, yeah.
So like with a sloth, now they don't have chloroplasts in their cells, but
how does the sloth turn green? You guys understand the question? You ever look at the back? You guys know the three-toed sloth? Three-toed sloth. If I go to Google image for a three-toed sloth, you know what I'm going to get? Ice Age. Three-toed sloth. There they are. And how come his fur is green? Does he have chloroplasts? No. He just has fur that collects algae on it, yeah? So the rain drips off the trees. There's algae, unicellular algae in the trees that trickles onto his fur because he doesn't bother to get up and get out of the rain. He just gets rained on because he's a sloth. And they start living there, yeah? And so he looks a little bit green. You look a little green there, buddy. Yeah, so sea slug green chloroplast. You can have sea slugs that, as they eat things that are green, can take chloroplasts up into their tissues. Yeah, they don't last long, but they do use them a little bit, as I understand. Yeah. Anyway, was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So, along with do we still have three-toed sloths in the kingdom Animalia? Yes, we do. How about the next one down? Do we still have three-toed sloths here? The next one is the chordata. What do you think? Yeah, that means a notochord, which is very close to a spinal cord, yeah? And there are almost no chordates that aren't vertebrates, yeah? Yeah, so N-O-T-O-C-H-O-R-D, notochord. You can look it up. It's something that runs right along the spinal cord of all larval vertebrates. Right? So when we go from here to here, from the Animalia to the chordata, what are we losing? We're losing the starfish. The starfish is an animal, but it is not a is not a vertebrate. Yeah, it has no spinal cord. Likewise, the butterfly is an animal, but it is an insect. It has an exoskeleton, yeah, not an endoskeleton. And the sponge, yeah, which is also an animal, but has no skeleton also, yeah? Guys clear on that? All right, so when we go from the chordata to the mammalia, what are we losing? Right, we're now in the class Mammalia. Have we lost the three-toed sloth yet? No, three-toed sloth is still a member of the mammals. We have lost the froggy, the bird, the turtle, and the fish, yeah? Does that make sense? Those are those are chordates. They have a backbone, but they are not mammals, yeah? So when we go from the mammalia to the carnivores, maybe that's the point where we've lost the three-toed sloth, yeah? All right. Guys good? Okay. And finally we get down to the, each time we go down another level, well, we get closer and closer and closer to understanding what there is to know about the American black bear, yeah?
What does the Ursinide A and then versus like stand for?
Ah, yeah, Ursus. What does that stand for? What does that mean? That means bear, right? So the name of the Big Dipper is Ursa Major, yeah? And the Little Dipper is Ursa Minor. That means big bear and little bear. So Ursa means bear. And how do you say bear in Spanish? Oso, yeah? So it's a very similar term, yeah? If you know French or Spanish, you are, I don't know, a third of the way to getting Latin, yeah? And if you spoke French, what would bear be? Ours. Excuse me. Oh. I'm just rubbing it in. Sorry. Sorry. I guess as an American, I sort of feel obliged to tease French people. I don't know why. Until they punch me in the face, which would be completely appropriate. All right. I'm sorry. Well, I certainly don't really want to hurt feelings. I'm just messing. I'm just funning. All right. So
the second one was
yeah. So what's the difference between Ursidae and Ursus? Is that the question? Sure. Yeah. So the answer, I don't know. Basically, these guys are more closely related. These guys are less closely related. Yeah. These are all closely related bears, but a panda bear and I guess that's a sun bear. I'm not really sure what kind of bear that is. Spectacled bear. Spectacled bear, yeah? Those guys are less, those guys branched off in evolutionary time longer ago, yeah? Does that make sense? And we could look that up, yeah? Ursidae phylogenetic tree. Family tree, boom. So, there they are, yeah? Oh, look at the little. So we can see that the sun bear, the sloth bear, the American black bear, the Asiatic, these ones are all closely related. The spectacled bear is further out, and the giant panda is further out, yeah? And if we went back further, maybe we'd find the wolverine, yeah? And maybe if we went back further than that, we'd find the raccoon. And if we went back further than that, we'd find the skunk. And if we went back further than that, we'd find the dog and the cat. And then if we went way back, we'd find the mushroom, yeah? Because all living things are related, yeah? So, I don't know. This is a microbiology class. I'm talking about phylogeny for the purpose of learning about phylogeny. But it is that's an interesting question, yeah? I like pandas too. And they must have some kind of structural evolutionary differences, yeah? Yeah, well, certainly if they're eating bamboo all day long, they're going to have a digestive system that's different, yeah? And on the other hand, though, there's lots of herbivorous mammals, and there's lots of herbivorous reptiles, and there's carnivorous mammals and carnivorous reptiles, yeah? So what living things eat is a significant indicator of how they're related, but it's certainly not the take it to the bank thing, yeah? What living things eat, though, will accelerate the rate at which things diverge evolutionarily, yeah? If I take up a vegetarian diet, then my...
You could bike 30 miles a day like me.
Yeah, so my... Right? And if it... Well, let me just say, if a species takes up a vegetarian diet, that will drive evolution also, yeah? That will make their body adapt to a vegetarian diet, and that will tend to make a species more different than another species that doesn't have a vegetarian diet. Does that make sense? Okay. So, you guys getting all this? So one thing we saw in the phylogenetic tree is that there's a little problem with the Linnaean classification system, yeah? Which is that living things evolve as evolution dictates, not as a classification structure dictates, yeah? And there are evolutionary events that happen that cause things to diverge, right? One species becomes two, a speciation event happens, and those things happen when they happen, not when Linnaeus says that they ought to happen. Does that make sense? And what we see here is that Linnaeus has two groups, right? The Ursidae and the Ursus, to separate the Ursidae family from the Ursus genus. But if we go back to that picture, we see that there's three events. There's three major divergence events, yeah? Which his system failed to capture. Is that clear? Right? The spectacled bear and the giant panda were put into the same group, but really they should be each put into their own group, yeah? But then you'd have superfamilies and suborders and so on, which taxonomists often sneak in, yeah? If I go to Wikipedia and I type in spectacled bear, we'll see the subfamily, yeah? And then above genus, there's tribe underneath subfamily and above genus, yeah? So what will happen is people will sneak in taxonomic orders, taxonomic groups, taxa, I guess they're called, when they need to in order to capture the evolutionary history of that adorable little dude, yeah? Is that guy cute? That guy's cute. That's just a fact, okay? Scientific fact. All right. We good to move on? All right. So you understand, the take-home message is that we have an intellectual construct, a classification system that helps us understand the evolutionary history of living things, yeah? But those evolutionary histories happen outside of the construct that we make, yeah? And so they don't tell the whole story. When evolution happens, it happens and things get adaptations. They get characteristics that separate them from all other things. We call those characteristics shared derived characters, yeah? The shared derived characters of eukaryotes is having a nucleus and having mitochondria. The shared derived characters of chordata is having a notochord and having a spinal cord. The shared derived characteristics of mammals is having mammary glands and fur. Yeah? Is that clear? So those things are things that group has that nothing else has. Yeah? There are lots of things that are carnivores. There are lots of things, that are carnivorous. Yeah? There are lots of things that can swim or fly or walk, but only the mammals have fur. Only the eukaryotes have a nucleus. Yeah? Is that clear? And nobody else. All right. And those things we call shared derived characters. Yeah? All right. So, again, taxonomy is great or phylogeny is great to know the evolutionary history of things, but then taxonomy is still kind of important, yeah? Can you tell these mushrooms apart? right? So if we can't tell them apart, maybe we should be careful when we go out mushroom picking, yeah? Whoopsie. Yeah, I think this person is wearing a glove, not because you'll die if you pick up a death cap mushroom, but you can get sick from picking one up, yeah? So wear a glove next time you're picking death cap mushrooms, and don't eat them, yeah?
Aren't there mushrooms that are like so identical that they can only be distinguished, like differentiated?
Yeah, so can you tell these apart? They have a white stem. They have a brown cap. They have a pretty similar shape. There's a these apart, these are not easy to tell apart, are they? Yeah. Is the consequence of getting it wrong significant? Yeah. It's either delicious pasta sauce or liver transplant. Yeah. Or death, right? Generally, when you eat a death cap mushroom, you get a liver transplant and maybe you get to live, yeah? Depending on how long it takes before someone says, oh, you've eaten a death cap mushroom, maybe you should barf that up, yeah? Or you'll die. So yes, these are hard to tell apart, and the consequences of getting it wrong are pretty significant, yeah? Okay. So we create phylogenetic trees based on shared derived characters and ever more so on DNA sequence similarity, yeah? We've talked about this already, and you guys understand this, yeah? You understand how a phylogenetic tree can be made, yeah? We can even study the DNA sequence similarity amongst proteins, yeah? Have you ever thought of that? Is this a weird idea? This is a phylogenetic tree, not of living things, but of a particular kind of protein, yeah? You understand? Yes? So, do you have hemoglobin? Yes, you do, right? It's in your blood. Do chimpanzees have hemoglobin? They do, yeah? And what about dogs and cats? Do they have hemoglobin? Yes, they do, yeah? Which do you think our hemoglobin is more closely similar to? The one from chimpanzees or the one from dogs and cats? Chimpanzees, yeah? Because we're more closely related, yeah? Does that make sense? What about dogs, cats, and sperm whales? What about sperm whales? Do you think do they have hemoglobin? Yeah, they are mammals, yeah? Is their hemoglobin the same as dogs and cats? How is a sperm whale different from a dog or a cat in terms of hemoglobin? What's life like for a sperm whale? They live under the water, yeah? They hold their breath for a long time, yeah? So their hemoglobin has got some other factors besides the fact that they're no longer the same species, yeah? We can expect that chimpanzees' hemoglobin is going to get more different from our hemoglobin as our species continue to diverge, as the time from our being the same species continues to increase. Do you agree? Right? But as far as the life of a chimpanzee versus the life of a human, our lives are different, but as far as breathing and carrying oxygen to our muscles, the job is pretty similar, don't you think? Does that make sense? They gotta breathe, we gotta breathe, yeah? And so the job of hemoglobin for us and the job of hemoglobin for them is not significantly different, yeah? But the job of hemoglobin for a sperm whale has got an environment that changes that protein. Does that make sense? Right? The environment of a sperm whale affects the evolution of its hemoglobin, doesn't it? You guys understand that? Right? Because he's got to hold his breath. He's got to go down to several thousand feet down to hunt squids or whatever he's hunting, yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. So, what do we have here? This is an unrooted phylogenetic tree of the myosin superfamily. Do you guys know what myosin is? Raise your hand if you remember myosin from physio class. Let me go with Cynthia. It's in your muscle fibers, yeah? And yet, if I look over here, can you guys read this? You probably can't. This says plant myosins. Does that seem odd to you? Do plants have muscles? The Venus flytrap. Is a muscle making the Venus flytrap open and close? It is not muscle fibers. And yet, they do have myosins, right? These things are definitely not making the plant's muscles flex, yeah? They're doing another job, yeah? Isn't that strange? Do you think their myosins are similar? Well, they have a common origin, but that origin is a long time ago, yeah? Whereas skeletal myosin, right, muscle myosin, and cardiac myosin, those are closely related. Does that make sense? Compared to plant myosins that are very, very distantly related. Okay. So, do proteins evolve at the same rate that their hosts evolve? They don't. Some proteins evolve faster than others, yeah? So, I'm going to take 3 things that are made out of protein, yeah? Hair, hemoglobin, and ribosomes. Let me just say these are encoded genetically, yeah? Which evolves the fastest and which evolves the slowest? So, this is A, B, and C, and this is 1, 2, and 3. And let me hear you guess. Slowest, medium, fastest. Match. Which ones match with which? Do you understand the question? Which ones evolve fastest and which ones evolve slowest? Julian, you have a guess?
I would say hair is the fastest, hemoglobin is medium, and ribosomes is slowest.
What do you think?
I think the ribosome is faster. Yeah.
Ribosomes faster? So let me. So because is a great thing to add. And so do you have a because? So hold your because. I want to start with Valerie's because. So ribosomes evolve the fastest. Why?
Because
What is the job of a ribosome? What does it do?
like to make protein.
Makes proteins, yeah?
Like the hair is falling out, right?
Yeah.
It makes all the protein. So replace that falling hair. The protein should be made in order to do this hair, right? Like to,
What do you? Does hair evolve as I live my life?
It's not the hair. It's like the protein.
The protein,
Hair.
yeah?
Yeah, like when we're losing something, when we're losing blood.
Well, aren't you making the argument that the hair would evolve fast?
No, I'm not. Because the hair depended on ribosomes.
Ah, because
It
the hair depends on the ribosomes to make the protein that the hair is made out of.
Like blood, the same.
So,
This is right.
what was your question, Ray? What is fast and what is slow? Well, so pretty much evolution is slow, yeah, no matter what. Guys understand? Right? But there's slow. Slow is a relative term, right? In the same way, small is a relative term. Julian.
Because it would be that certain factors can have an impact on that more so that just
What do you think? That's adaptation, it's not evolution? What do you think? What's the difference? Adaptation is evolution, yeah? They're the same thing. Well, yeah, so you would be right to argue that, but adaptation from generation to generation, permanent adaptation, that's evolution, yeah? Right? So I can do push-ups and adapt to the environment of making myself do push-ups, yeah? And my muscles get a little bigger, right? But they don't get crazy bigger, yeah? And it doesn't mean that my children will have huge muscles, yeah. Good. So how does evolution happen? What are the mechanisms that make evolution happen? There's two things. One, natural selection, yeah? What's the other thing? Mutation. And both of them happen during times reproduction creates the variation, genetic variation, that natural selection works on. And if we get mutations, do they tend to help the function of our proteins or hurt them? Hurt them is much more likely than help them, yeah? So, what happens if we hurt the function of our hair? We have funny looking hair, yeah? So what's the consequence of having funny looking hair? Getting made fun of, yeah? You gotta resort to other things in order to reproduce, right? You have to tell jokes. You have to learn to play the violin, right? But you can still have a reproductively successful life, yeah? What happens if you have mutations in your hemoglobin? Yeah, so it's hard to deliver oxygen to your tissues. Do people survive that? Yes, they do. Sickle cell anemia people can lead normal lives, yeah, or somewhat normal lives, but they can't go and get on the exercise bike and start cranking it out, yeah? They can't climb Mount Everest, and if we were back in the caveman days, they would have a harder time surviving, yeah? Does that make sense? What if you get a mutation in your ribosomes? You're toast, yeah? If your ribosomes stop working, what happens? You don't make proteins, yeah? Every one of your proteins doesn't get made, and we never even see you, yeah? A sperm fertilizes an egg, and the first cell doesn't make proteins. We don't get the second cell. We don't get the fourth cell, the little embryo. We don't get the baby. We never see that, yeah? Does that make sense? Right? The consequences of having defective ribosomes are lethal. The consequences of having defective hair are minor, yeah? Does that make sense? Right? And so as a result, if mutations happen to hair, no big deal. If mutations happen to ribosomes, very big deal. And if mutations happen to hemoglobin, medium big deal. Does that make sense? Okay. So, which do we use to measure the relatedness of organisms? We use the one that evolves slowly, yeah? Because if there are differences, right, evolution does happen in ribosomes, but it happens slowly, right? Because small changes in a ribosome might be survivable, but loss of function of a ribosome is not survivable. Does that make sense? Okay, so any changes, though, are big changes, right? Right? Any change to a ribosome represents a significant change from something before, yeah? And so we can use the sequences of DNA that make the ribosomes to compare one species to another, yeah? Right? Our hemoglobin is probably different from a chimpanzee's hemoglobin, but our ribosomes are probably spot on the same, yeah? Does that make sense? Or very slightly different. Okay, So how do we do this? Well, we compare sequences and we make a tree, yeah? So here I've got 4 different bacteria, yeah? Lactobacillus brevis, San Franciscanus, Acidophilus plantarum. Which one is the most different from brevis? Can you guess? The second one, San Franciscanus, yeah? What do we use Lactobacillus acidophilus for? Yogurt, yeah? What do we use this one for? Anyone guess? I gotta prop my hometown. San Franciscanus, yeah?
Sourdough.
Oh, snap!
Yeah. Sourdough bread.
You guys know where sourdough bread comes from, don't you?
No.
It's so good.
Comes from San Francisco, yeah? Yeah, so I asked this question, you know what most people say? Rice-a-roni? Do you guys, anyway, so I'll just move on. So we compare, those were 10 bases of DNA or RNA, yeah? We compare 50% similarity, 70% similarity, 60% similarity, and from that, we can make a phylogenetic tree, and we can say that these 2 are the most closely related, this one is a little less related, and this one is the most different, yeah? You guys got that? All right. So, why is phylogeny important? So this, maybe we'll talk about this and then we'll take lunch, yeah? Or break, sorry. So, can you guys see what's going on in this picture? Julian, you're the furthest away, yeah? You can't see it. Forget about it, Tamika, is that right? All right, so I might, what about in the front? Jill, can you see it? You can, okay. All right, so what do you see here? What does this one say? Loud, please, somebody who can read it. Dentist 1, yeah? I was at the dentist yesterday. What does this say? Patient C. I was at the dentist getting a haircut, yes. They did a great day, used the drill. Bzzz. Anyway, what's this one say? Patient A2, yeah? What does that say? Dentist 2. Patient A1. Patient B. What's that say? Control 2. Control 2, Roman numeral 2. MN. Control 7. What's this one say? Patient D1. Patient D2. Control 5, Control 6, Control 7. What are these? Tree analysis of V3 nucleotide sequences from the dentist, patients A, B, C, and D, and 7 local control patients, and from 6 North American HIV isolates, MN, BAL, etc., SF33, and so on. Yeah? What is this? This is a phylogenetic tree of what? HIV. Does HIV have genetic material? Can we, what do you guys know about the genetic material of HIV? Raise your hand if you know. Julian. Yeah, so viruses make you sick by sticking their DNA into you, yeah? Or in the case of HIV, they're sticking in RNA, but the result is the same as we'll see in chapter 13, yeah? What about, and does DNA evolve? Do viruses evolve? What about HIV? What do you know about the evolution of HIV? Julian. Because it evolves so fast, it keeps changing. Your body can't keep up with the rate at which it changes, yeah? How many people knew that coming into the class, that HIV evolves really fast? You've heard that from what you know from the rest of your lives, yeah? Not everybody is raising their hands, but many people have heard that, yeah? Okay. So what is this? These are comparisons of HIV isolates MN, BAL. So here's MN. What does MN stand for? I don't know, Minnesota, yeah? BAL, what's that? Baltimore, yeah. SF, 33. San Francisco, yeah? So this is, it doesn't say the year, but this is I think this is an event that happened in the 90s when it wasn't certain how, right? Remember, it wasn't until the 90s that we really started learning about how HIV works, yeah? How do you get HIV? Transfusions, blood. Say it again. Fluids, bodily fluids. All right, they just stole your thunder, yeah? So, so bodily fluids, blood, and so on and so forth. Can you get it from your dentist? If that you can get it from your dentist if what? If they don't sterilize their equipment. And what? Maybe they don't wear gloves, yeah? That's not just gross, right? It is, maybe that's gross, but that's also lethal, yeah? Was that known that you could get it from the dentist? How can you prove that you got it from a dentist? Is this proof that these people got it from a dentist? So, in order to prove that they got it from the dentist, what would make you suspect that you got HIV from your dentist? I swear, honey, I got it from the dentist. Right? Other people got it from the dentist, right? All the people go to the same dentist, yeah? They test positive for HIV. Maybe they're 45 years old and married, yeah? Or whatever. Does that matter? So what else? So I've got patients A, B, C, and D. Did they all get HIV from their dentist? So does the dentist have HIV? Only the patients? Is the dentist positive for HIV or not? What does this one say up here? It says dentist 1. What does this one say here? Dentist 2. What does that mean? There's 2 dentists that have HIV?
Dentist 2 give HIV to patient.
Ah, what is the difference between dentist 1 and dentist 2?
Dentist 2 has HIV.
2 different dentists that transmitted the disease.
Incorrect. That's a good guess, right? It's a completely legitimate guess.
Dentist 2 has HIV.
Dentist 1 and dentist 2 were taken from the same blood sample, from the same dentist. Yeah? What are they? They're 2 different strains of HIV. What are they doing in the dentist?
Patients.
They're evolving in there. Yeah? They evolved in the dentist. Why are there 2 strains? Because HIV evolves fast. Yeah? And your immune system can't keep up. Yeah? So the dentist got HIV. Yeah? And when the dentist got HIV, the dentist's immune system fought the HIV. Yeah? And when the dentist fought the HIV evolved. Yeah? When the HIV evolved, we diverged. We had a phylogenetic tree, and we got 2, quote, species of HIV. Species Roman numeral 1 and species Roman numeral 2, both in the same dentist. Yeah? Are the 2 strains closely related? They are, right? Are they related? Did he get it from San Francisco strain 33? What do you think? Well, San Francisco strain 33 is down here. Dentist 1 and dentist 2 are up here, yeah? The branches are fairly far apart. So it's unlikely that the dentist got it from that strain, yeah? Does that make sense? What about patient A? Patient A, patient B. It looks like patient A's strain is very close to the second strain from dentist 1. Patient C's HIV strain is very similar to the dentist 1 strain, yeah? Right? So, did patient C get HIV from the dentist? It's likely, yeah? What about patient A? Yeah, patient A has 2 strains. It looks like they might have gotten infected after patient C, yeah? Because they got 2 strains that are similar to the 2 strains from the dentist, whereas patient C probably visited the dentist before and only got 1 strain, yeah? Right? What about patient D? Patient D was also a patient of this dentist. And patient D also has HIV. Where is patient D? Down here, yeah? Are there DNA sequences from the dentist that are similar? No, not very similar. Not as similar as all these, yeah? Very different, yeah? Where do you think patient D got, do you think patient D got HIV from the dentist? Looks like they got it some other way, yeah? The old-fashioned way, right? This patient D, whoever they were, probably had more fun getting HIV than these people did, yeah? Because they were going to the dentist. That's about as unfun as anything. And then, you know, unprotected sex is life-threatening, but it's certainly more fun than going to the dentist, yeah? Sorry, I hope nobody minds my little humor there. Yes?
So, is this real? Like, did people actually get it in their dental?
What about it? Yeah, so this happened in the 90s. And could we learn from this and say, oh, let's never make this mistake again, yeah? Never going to the dentist again. So what I meant by that was maybe dental procedures would be revised after this, yeah? Wouldn't you think? So,
How likely would it be you would actually get it from someone who's working on it?
so I just saw, let's see, dentist, HIV. Over 11,000 dental patients in Sydney, Australia at risk of HIV and hepatitis. So, search, let's see, recent, let's see, custom range. January 2013 to present. Dr. Wayne Harrington allegedly infects 7,000 patients with HIV, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So long after this, I mean, I found this slide, or I found this figure on the internet, you know, sometime in 2009 when I made this slide, yeah? Yeah, so, oops, I don't know who that guy is, but whoever he is, he's hacking your company. Did you know that? Okay. So, Wayne Harrington, Scott Harrington, it looks like nobody knows his name, but, oh, W. Scott, so Wayne Scott Harrington. Oklahoma dentist. Seek medical tests to ensure that they haven't been exposed.
Just one lemon left.
So he's
Lemon
got
Skittles are my
7,000
favorite.
They're my
clients.
favorite. Said like the usual way!
Settle the
rainbow.
and
Taste the rainbow.
major violations of the Oklahoma Dental Act, yeah? Which tells people...
For Newsy, I'm Carissa Lathan. Health officials in Oklahoma are investigating a Tulsa dentist who they say might have exposed thousands of patients to hepatitis or HIV. Scott Harrington has been licensed to practice dentistry in the state since the late 1970s. The Oklahoma and Tulsa Health Department sent letters to 7,000 patients treated at his clinic since 2007, urging them to get tested.
The people who do checking on dentists went in to check up on his place, and they found multiple violations, and all these assistants allegedly doing dentistry without a license. They checked him again, it happened again.
Harrington is cooperating with authorities and has voluntarily suspended his practices while the investigation takes place. Now health officials say it is rare for infections to spread in occupational settings, but still recommended that patients notified get tested. The Tulsa Health Department has set up free testing centers to handle the volume of patients. For Newsy, I'm Carissa Lathan.
Right? Phylogenetic trees clearly are allowing us to trace diseases, learn how they're transmitted, create laws.
Our coffee shop is a place for good food and conversation. These days, a lot of the talk is about fracking. So I looked into it and learned it's been done safely for over 65 years. That says a lot.
Join the conversation at energyfromshale.org.
Conceivably help us solve crimes. Could this... have you seen this before?
Josh Taylor has more on what investigators are calling a highly unusual situation. He's live and local tonight. Josh.
This technique
the Arkansas State Health Department says a certain group of patients of Ocean Dental from ages 14 to 22 were treated with tainted medications, and they are reaching out to those patients for them to be treated for any possible infections. William Jarrett Stewart worked at Ocean Dental from November of 2011 until February 20th of 2012. He had offices in Fayetteville, Fort Smith, Hot Springs, Jonesboro, and Little Rock. The Drug Enforcement Agency says Stewart was tampering with vials of IV drugs.
We have chosen to go back 3 months in time, basically his last 3 months of practice, to notify people who received sedation dentistry where they received a particular medicine called meperidine or Demerol into their veins.
Ocean Dental released a statement saying, quote, although Ocean Dental was not aware of any information indicating Dr. Stewart had any infectious disease, and no reports have been received about any of his patients contracting any infectious diseases, the Arkansas Department of Health is recommending that these patients be tested as a precaution. Stewart died 9 days after the health department says he stopped working for Ocean Dental. We've learned that he died in the ICU of a Little Rock hospital. The health department won't release his cause of death, but does say he did not die of an infection. The health department won't specify what kind of infection the patients might be at risk for.
We think the risk is exceptionally low, but we're not 100% confident that the risk is zero. That's why we're doing this.
And the Department of Health is urging any of his patients between the ages of 14 and 22 that might have had oral surgery to be tested for any possible infections.
For more information, patients can contact Ocean Dental